I think that there are three important qualities that any serious actor, any creative artist should possess. The first, intellectual curiosity. You've got to educate yourself. You've got to feed yourself. You can't bring more to your art than what resides inside of you. The second is empathy towards human suffering. Actors are acrobats of the human heart. How much of the human condition can you relate to? How many shoes can you fill? And the third is developing a sound mind and body. How do you keep yourself from developing unhealthy patterns of behavior? How do you cultivate a compassionate voice? How do you curate self-love within you? How do you take care of yourself after a deep emotional day on set or in rehearsal, working night after night after night? Taking care of your body. We bring on today my good friend, Reiki master and nutritionist, Laura Pensiero, who works with actors on this very subject. So put the phone back in your pocket. Creating Behavior starts now. Well, hello, my fellow daydreamers. I'm excited about today's conversation that I get to share with you. I think it's very important. I don't know about you, but when I got out of school, I moved to New York City in 1993. Okay? I was 20. I had just turned 23 years old. Had never been to New York City before. And I showed up with a bag and moved in with one of my college friends. Got a job, waiting tables, bartending, and spent the first year or so just trying to survive, just getting my life set. And I don't know, maybe you guys can relate to this. You start working, you're working 30 hours a week at least in order to pay your bills. You're working in the food industry, you got long shifts, you're working doubles, you're getting off at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then, you go and have a beer, you hang out with your coworkers. And then maybe, I don't know, someone breaks out an 8-ball and you're doing a line of coke. And then, I don't know, and then you fuck somebody you shouldn't be fucking. And all of a sudden, you start developing really unhealthy patterns of behavior. And you can get lost in that. And it actually keeps you from pursuing your career in any serious way. And I think that those of us that can learn from that can all step back and say, you know what, this is not working for me, I need to change. Those are the actors that have a really good shot. I grew up embracing this cliche of the suffering artist. It's like, oh, well, you can only do really good work if you're fucked up. And I just looked at all the artists that flamed out, right in front of us, that left an incredible body of work, whether that's Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain. You see the tragedy of someone like Philip Seymour Hoffman dying on the floor from a heroin overdose, or Heath Ledger dying in his bed. And you think, wow, man, they were really tortured. And I just don't think that is how you have to live your life in order to do really good work. I think acting requires a hell of a lot from you. What you have to be able to pull from inside of you. What you have to risk, right? You're putting your soul on the line. And if you're lucky enough to be working at a high level, you're going to have to, function from your rage, your heartbreak, your joy, silliness, grief, shame. You're going to have to come to terms with the parenting, the socialization, the education that you've had that have kept you restricted or repressed. It's a lot of heavy lifting, but this is the job of the actor. And so when I bought the Maggie Flanagan studio in 2012 from my mentor, I really wanted to offer a conservatory program that cared about wellness. And so I wanted a Reiki master. I wanted a nutritionist. I wanted to offer my students some tools that they could take with them. And that's how I found Laura. She is a Reiki master, a certified nutritionist for actors, and I just thought, this is serendipitous. And she's been working with my students now for a number of years. And we're going to talk today about letting go of bad patterns. Letting go of those experiences while also setting intentions for yourself, goals. How do you work on yourself in a positive way? Personal healing, right? So I started off the conversation just asking about her own journey, how she, came out of NYU at 20 years old, 21 years old, and the mistakes that she made starting out. And this is how we started. Laura Penziero.
Yeah. I mean, I think I had to learn that lesson the hard way of just not having the tools, graduating from NYU, Tisch School of the Arts, Stella Adler Conservatory, that 4-year program. I graduated in 2006, and they really didn't talk about wellness or mental health much at all. It was kind of like, okay, do it on your own, go to therapy, let go of the character when you're done working on it. Okay, figure it out. And so I did get caught up in that, belief maybe in some way that, okay, well, I have to go through stuff and you do, you need to live, your lived experiences is going to shape you and affect your art and you as a human being. But just I felt like I had to really almost destroy myself in a way. And I got into this cycle of just really unhealthy behaviors of drinking and drugs and, just unhealthy eating habits and eating disorders. And it was just really detrimental to me as a human and as an artist. And it kept me from pursuing acting really professionally.
Shit. I mean, I did drugs, and you go to any theater program, everybody's getting high, or there's drinking, there's parties, there's just that lifestyle, after a show, you go out and drink. And
yeah.
Where did it start to turn for you? Can you look back and go, oh yeah, it was really this time or this moment where things spiraled?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was, honestly, I had moved out to LA just right after I graduated in 2006. And it started to unravel for me pretty early on. I got into working at a restaurant, what actors do. And I ended up working at this fine dining restaurant that I loved. And I started as a hostess and I worked my way up to server. But I was really passionate about that kind of lifestyle, or not the lifestyle, but just the, how fine dining is an art form in of itself. And you're working with chefs that are really passionate about the food that they're plating, and you're cultivating this experience for guests. So I really fell in love with that, but it kind of distracted me, and I was good at it too. And I excelled really quickly up this ladder of hospitality and making a lot of money. So I was able to almost distract myself by making good money, doing something that I was passionate about, but I let my art go in a lot of ways. And that I felt very creatively stifled. And so because of that, it was a slow unravel, I would say, but I started, going out more and then partying and then getting into a group of people who were doing drugs. And it was like partying every night after work and then sleeping all day. And then just slowly but surely, it really started to unravel. I ended up moving back to New York. I booked this film, Split, this writer, director, Deborah Kampmeyer. She's incredible. And it was really just serendipitous the way everything worked out. My lease was up with my apartment the same time that we were shooting, and things just really fell in place for me to move back to New York. But during that time, when I moved back to New York, I was trying to get back into it, but I just never really could. I never believed in myself as an actor. So I And that was a thing that I realize now what was really missing. It was like, there's all these other people doing this. And I just didn't value myself as an artist at that time, or that I had something to say that was important. So it really fully unraveled for me, I feel, when I became a restaurant manager, because
that is the worst fucking job that you could possibly have. It's thankless. You're pretty much on call 24/7, and you don't even make as much as the fucking waiters.
Exactly. And so it was one of those things that I was working for this company, and I was one of their top servers, and they kept asking me, manage. And I was turning 30, and I was like, okay, I feel like I maybe want to open up my own restaurant, maybe want to open up a bar. Like, let's just go for it. Right. Like, I'm not really doing anything else. And it was the worst and yet best experience of my life, because it was such a toxic environment. I was so anxious. I was depressed. I would shake on my way into work. And I felt just overwhelmed with anxiety of, the owners are coming down on you. Your servers are coming down on you, the guests. And this was a restaurant on the Upper West Side. And if anyone knows anything about the Upper West Side, I mean, you cannot make those I hate to say it. Maybe it was just this restaurant I worked at, but you could not make those guests happy. No matter what I did, they were never happy. So long story short, it really started to unravel. And I was at such a low point in my life where I was doing a lot of drugs, drinking a lot, my eating disorder tendencies were coming back. I really was filled with a lot of self-hatred. And I got a Reiki healing. I kept hearing, my friend got Reiki attuned, and then there were actually 2 Reiki masters at the restaurant that I worked at. And so I kept hearing about Reiki, and I was like, let's just go for it. And it was a transformational experience. It felt like every single cell in my body got reorganized. I felt connected to my heart center. And I hadn't felt that, just a place of deep connection to self that I hadn't felt in a really, really long time. It was a beautiful experience. And at the end of that session, the Reiki master had me pull a rune. It's a form of divination. And the rune was the Dagas rune, which means breakthrough, dawn of a new day. And in the description, it basically was saying, you're on the precipice of a major shift or change in your life. And that felt more real than anything I had felt in a really long time.
So then what happens? You go to this Reiki session and you get your world rocked.
Yeah. So I just knew I wanted more of this. So I kept going back, getting Reiki healing. And the Reiki master is also a teacher. So I just got Reiki 1 attuned without really, so to become a practitioner. But a lot of Reiki 1 is about self-care and self-Reiki. So I was really just doing it at the time for my own personal healing. And then I just loved it. And I felt there were major shifts. Reiki, it translates from Japanese to universal life energy. And it is just a laying of hands. So, but it also transcends time and space. So you can work with the energy field as well. But Reiki 1 is just about, there's these 21 hand positions, and you just place your hands on your body and breathe and connect. And it was such an incredible experience of me just doing this practice for my own self-healing that I was like, I want more. And I just kept on wanting more. And so I did Reiki 2, and then just wanting more. And during this time, I kept hearing in my head, just Reiki for actors kept coming up for me. And I knew then that I wanted to kind of bridge these worlds of acting and healing work. Because acting is a spiritual practice. And I feel like as actors, you are healers in a way. And a lot of the work I was doing in, the Reiki trainings of breathing and visualization and just connecting and, being present with your own body. And then if you're doing a session with someone else, being really present with them and being open and connected with what's going on in their bodies and in their energy. So there was a lot of just overlap between the practices. And I just felt like I wanted to bring these worlds together more. And I felt like, wow, this Reiki stuff is a really useful tool to help ground, to help breathe, to help get back into the body. And this could be really beneficial for actors and artists.
How was it changing your life just day to day? I mean, like, what was it doing to you and what was it doing for you?
It was really opening me up, not only my heart center up, but like my mind up. It was starting to change like what I wanted. And I am that person I was really pushing myself to make this restaurant management job work. Because I was like, I don't want to quit. I'm like, I'm not a quitter. I'm going to just push through. I'm going to make this thing fit. But it started to make me think, what am I trying to make fit here? Like, what do I want? I think for a lot of my life, it was like, what should I do? What is the right thing to do? Or what is the thing that would make my parents proud of me? Or what is the thing that would make other people like me? And for the first time, I was like, what is it that I want? And that was a big shift that I didn't really have before, where it was like, I was empowering myself. And that felt like so huge. But at the same time, it was interesting. So as was getting into this healing work and doing this, my own work, my work at the restaurant, not that I was tanking, but things were just, I could almost just not do it anymore. It was almost unbearable being in this really toxic environment. And I got let go. And it was the best thing that happened to me. I mean, it was the first job I ever like got let go of. So that on an ego level was like, how did they fire me? When that was an awful job and I should have quit, but once I got over that hump, it was like, wow, this needed to happen. This was a necessary kind of shift that just needed to take place. And that made me really reevaluate how I was going to move forward. It made me want to take this, what was just a thing for my kind of personal healing. And that started me on that path of thinking, wow, I really could maybe help other people. Like maybe this is something.
I was having a conversation the other day with the artist Swoon. I don't know if you know her, Caledonia Curry. She's one of the biggest street artists in the world. She's a phenomenal artist. She grew up in a very toxic home, right? She grew up, both of her parents were heroin addicts. And she had just a lot of trauma in her young life. And so we were just talking about how addiction, it is rooted to trauma. It is rooted to, some childhood trauma in your life. And you've got to reconcile and come to terms with the trauma in order to really heal yourself. And so what I find very interesting, and certainly working with actors, and you know this, in the Meisner work, and they come into the studio and, they're working to process emotion that they spend most of their lives repressing, right? So they're getting in touch with their rage and their heartbreak, their joy, their silliness, their grief, their shame, their humiliation, and all of these unconscious traumas, whether it's, abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional abuse, and it can really do a number on them. And I guess I'm curious to what are your thoughts about that, about addressing the trauma, getting to the root of the shit that is actually causing all of the bad habits, the drinking, the self-hate, the anxiety, all of these things that all of us in some form or another really deal with, right?
Yeah, it's, this work is so powerful. And that kind of what has led me from the Reiki also to the breath work is that breath work is a very visceral, emotional experience. This 2-stage pranayama breathing that I do, facilitates an emotional release. So it's this cathartic experience, and you're in a lot of ways resetting the central nervous system. Like you're shaking the central nervous system up, and you're clearing out pain and trauma and grief that might be hiding in the body and in the psyche. And with that, emotions, memories, things come up and that endure. And as they come up, what I do as a guide and a facilitator of this work is just go back to holding all of yourself with more loving, compassionate energy. And a lot of it is kind of an inner child healing work where we're going, holding, like reparenting ourselves in a lot of way, because if there's anything that's, I guess, hidden that you're not aware of, that it's gonna come out in really unexpected or inopportune times when you're acting. So part of the work, I feel, as actors and artists is to the self-reflection and to really dive inward and go deep of all of yourself and the parts that are uncomfortable, the parts of you that you don't want to really face or go through or, accept that it is part of you. So it is a challenging part, but I think it is so necessary and just vital as on the journey. It's part of the work, really, that self-awareness is a huge part of it.
Well, and especially when actors are training themselves in a serious program, right? Certainly, like whatever what you went through at NYU and what my students go through, they're living through in class these deep human experiences, right? And they leave, then class is over, and they're shaken to their core. They've experienced rage like they haven't experienced in their life, or they've stood up for themselves in a way that they never have in their life, or they've been humiliated or embarrassed in the work, and they don't know how to deal with it once they leave. So why do you think it's important for an actor to consider this kind of work? You said something about reparenting, which I don't know what that means. I mean, I do in some sense, but
the challenges that we have as adults, whether it be just in relationships or in life in general, come from those childhood wounds, those childhood trauma. Maybe as a kid, we didn't receive something that we needed to receive. So as an adult, being able to almost talk to ourselves in a way, in a loving and compassionate way, and building that self-trust with ourselves that, okay, I can take care of me, that I know what I need and I can provide and nourish myself. And that's really empowering. I feel like this work is just so beneficial for actors because it is a place to process. As you said, you're so raw and open and vulnerable, and you're shaken to your core when you kind of crack yourself, your vulnerability, and you crack your heart open in a way that is necessary in acting. Being able to come back to the self and come back to your own energy and get back connected to your vibration. And it's really grounding. So I think sometimes, you get off set or, there's cut on this really emotional scene and there is that energy, that adrenaline is going, or you can get into that place of anxiousness or adrenaline. And so this work just helps bring you back into your body and get back connected, and breathing, which is so important.
You said that you had this idea, Reiki for actors. What have you discovered? What are some interesting things that made you go, oh yeah, you know what? This is right. This is absolutely right.
Yeah. Every group or every person I work with, it is just a new level of inspiration I get from seeing how open but grounded, and how those emotions are able to really flow seamlessly through them because of this work, and how it is a place where the students can just connect to not only themselves but to each other, and how community is so important. And I've seen just incredible shifts and changes in my students and my clients. And it is really inspiring. Acting is challenging. It's demanding. And so giving them the tools where they are able to sleep more, or they're eating better, and they're connected to their heart center, and they're breathing, and they're grounded. It's really powerful. It's really powerful to witness that and to see that transformation happen. And it's exciting.
Well, you said eating better. I mean, you're also a nutritionist.
Yeah. So that happened. It kind of happened all at once. So after the 2016 election, so that week was a week for me personally. It was my boyfriend at the time. We were living together. We were supposed to be in Mexico visiting his family, but right before we left, he told me that he wanted to still date me, but be polyamorous. Anyways, I said,
that doesn't seem like it's going to work out.
Different things for different people, but for me, that really wasn't for me. So I said, you go to Mexico, I'm staying here. When you get back, just pick up your stuff. And that's it. So that happened. And then the election happened. And I was like, which was obviously, we know, devastating. And the next day I bought my domain name. I ordered a Reiki table, and I was like, this is it. So at the time though, I was still drinking. I wasn't sober yet, but it was this slow transition where I put it out there. I just told everyone I knew, I'm doing complimentary Reiki healings. Like, who wants to try it? Like, tell your friends, tell everyone. So I did. I just started doing it. I really need to, if this is what I want to do, I want to really invest in me and my own personal healing first. And part of that was I decided to go to Institute for Integrative Nutrition to get my health coaching certification. And I had, throughout my whole life, been really interested in nutrition. And I was a competitive swimmer in high school. From the age of 12, I swam year round. It was 2 hours in the morning, 3 hours in the afternoon, Monday through Friday, meets on the weekends. It was a really intense practice that I had at a young age. So I got interested in nutrition and breathing and kind of visualization from a very young age. So a lot of my passion in this really started when I was a swimmer. So I had always, from those years, been really passionate about nutrition and how it, affects performance and affects the body, and how the necessity of it in performing. So I was like, I'm going to do this health coaching program. And that's when I decided to also get my Reiki master. So it was a year program. I was in this program, and at the same time decided to get my Reiki master. And I got my Reiki master with Lisa Levine at Maha Rose. And I had a meeting with her, an interview for it. And it was that day, April 22nd, 2017, that I made that commitment to myself that sobriety was something that I wanted long term. I think I'd already given up drinking a couple weeks earlier, just I need to clean up my act a little bit. But when I stopped drinking, I didn't really think it was long term. It was kind of this, okay, I'm going to just stop for now. And it was that day that was a really big day for me, realizing, okay, this is what I want to do. It was I want to be of service and help people. And in order to do that, I need to take myself seriously. I need to believe in myself more.
Did you consider yourself an alcoholic, or just someone who just drank and, I just don't want to fucking drink anymore because I don't like how it makes me feel?
Yeah. So at the beginning, I always kind of thought I'm not really an alcoholic. I could stop. I never, drank at work. I never, it never really affected my life, but it always, always, always somehow led to a lot of other unhealthy behaviors. So
bad decisions.
Yeah. So it's I wasn't going to do cocaine sober. It was because I was drinking alcohol. I wasn't going to sleep with this random person sober. I did it because I was on alcohol. Same thing with eating. I was never going to eat an entire, box of cookies sober, but drinking, I did. And I didn't like myself like that. It felt it was me. I did those things. I had to take ownership of those choices I made when I was drinking, but it allowed me to be this person that I didn't like. So the longer I went without drinking, the more I realized how entangled I was with alcohol and unhealthy behaviors, and how I would say now I am an alcoholic. I would use that term now, but I didn't like to label myself at the beginning. I didn't do, I know so many people who have done AA and that program really worked for them. I've been to a meeting, but I didn't go down that path because the work I was doing with the health coaching, with Reiki, so much of that was like my own personal program. There was a support network with Institute for Integrative Nutrition. I had a support network with my Reiki community. So I felt like I was lucky in a lot of ways. I had a lot of support.
I think that most people, when they hear the word nutrition, they think diet, all of the limitations you've got to put on yourself. And I don't know, I just never found the word very appealing. In terms of creativity, in terms of just your overall ability to be able to get up and be productive and sleep and all of that I think an artist contends with, like how important is like what you put in your body? Like what have you learned about creativity and what you eat?
Yeah, it is. Those two things are really so connected because if you're eating food that doesn't make you feel good, that's going to cut you off. I mean, it just on a spiritual level, like that's your belly, like that's your creative center. If you're having digestive issues, that's going to block you from creative inspiration. It's going to take away from like your mental focus. It's going to distract you from the work that needs to happen. So my approach is, food as fuel, but that's going to look different for everyone. And it's really about getting, you connected with what makes you feel good. And that I don't like to limit what people eat. I don't like diets, and that's not my approach. My approach is more, an intuitive way of eating where, okay, how am I feeling when I eat this? And, food journaling is part of, especially at the beginning of working with clients, of really just, how do I feel not only physically, but how does this meal make me feel emotionally, spiritually, mentally? And just by that kind of reflection and self-awareness through what you're putting in your body and that mindfulness around food, you start to really understand what it is that your body needs and, creating a plan that's going to work for you, that's going to be really personalized to how you feel when you eat certain foods. And we're all different, and we have different, there's a basic, calorie needs, fat needs, carbohydrate, like there's basic needs that we need to meet. But within that, there's a lot of flexibility, and there's a lot of, even just within individuals, what vitamins we need, but what time of year it is. Like we have different needs based on the seasons. And I feel, there's been that kind of idea of like a one size fits all approach. You hear a lot of like, okay, this is the diet or this is the way, where it's like, there is no one size fits all. And we have to be flexible, even like within the day or the week or the month or the year, what we're eating and when we're eating it.
Well, when we're eating it, for sure. I know that for myself. But even just, you eat the wrong foods, it really does fuck with you.
Absolutely. And I think we are just a culture that is heavily over caffeinated as well. And so that's a big one, especially with sleep. There are some people who even that cup of coffee in the morning is going to affect their sleep at night. And if anyone comes to me who has trouble sleeping, which I think is a lot of people, I mean, sugar and caffeine and alcohol are huge, huge triggers. And it's really important too with these, because these substances, they're drugs. They affect our brain as a chemical, as a drug does. So it's important to be aware of that also, that if you are drinking, say, 5 cups of coffee in the morning, don't just stop drinking coffee. That can have the same effect of like disrupting your sleep and everything. So working with people, really moving slowly too, which I think we as collectively like to move fast and like, okay, I want all the change all at once, but then there's burnout. So I really talk about, making how are you going to make these long lasting changes? And usually when it comes to diet and implementing healthy habits, like slow and steady is better for the long run.
What are some healthy habits?
So some healthy habits are, I love journaling. Morning pages, Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way. She talks about just kind of getting rid of the mental chatter and gunk in the morning, just free writing 3 pages, gratitude lists, writing love letters to yourself. But it can look, healthy habits can look, there can be in so many different ways. I love just taking 10 minutes out of your day to dance, just move your body in a way that feels really fun and exciting to you. Get outside, go for a walk, do some meditating, do some deep breaths, do some breath work, exercise, being mindful around our meals. I know this is something that I struggle with even still, of like having so much to do or putting a lot on my plate and then just eating on the go, or make that meal an experience for yourself. Food isn't just kind of what we're eating, but how we're eating it, how we're consuming it. And if we're just shoveling food in our mouth, we're not going to assimilate it as well as if we're mindful and we're chewing and it's like part of an experience that we're having. There's, adding the element of like love into our food, our nourishment, because it is nourishment. So kind of looking at it as a more holistic experience than just what I'm eating.
How do you write a love letter to yourself?
You just write whatever you need to hear in that moment. And it can be different every time, but just thanking yourself for being here. And I don't know, it can look a lot of different ways, but it can be a sensual experience. It can be an intimate experience. And it should be an intimate experience, but really giving yourself that love and nourishment. And I give that exercise a lot, or writing a list of things that you love about yourself. And generally there's a lot of resistance around it can bring up a lot of, and that's what I'm also getting at the work is like, we want to know where the resistance is. It's okay if there's resistance. It's okay if like writing yourself a love letter makes you want to like scream and get out and, it brings up maybe some pain or trauma. We want to see like that. We want that to come up. Like we want to start to see where that pain and trauma is. And it probably is from a childhood wound or from, an awful breakup. And there might need to be continued healing in that area. So it's important to see what areas need love and healing. I believe fully in this work, and I believe fully in myself facilitating this work. And I never felt that when I was an actor. I never had that drive, that passion that I have for this work. It was always really hard for me to like, reach out or put myself out there or do anything business related. It was an impossibility. But with this work, I want to put myself out there because I know how valuable the work is. So that's something that I realized is so important, is really valuing yourself and valuing what it is you have to offer the world and other people.
Our community, it's kind of overlooked in the destruction that this pandemic has wrought. But studios like mine and any kind of arts training that puts people in a room together, it's been absolutely decimated. How have you adapted in the last 6 months to just keep yourself working and viable? And how have you survived?
Yeah, it was, again, I feel like just out of a necessity, when everything kind of shut down, I was 100% out of work. Everything closed. So it was out of that, a necessity of, financial necessity, but also out of just a necessity for me and to keep myself grounded during this time, but also to offer this work to people that really, really needed it. And I always resisted doing the work virtually because I just felt the in-person connection is so important.
I felt the same way doing, Meisner's work on Zoom. I just thought, fuck it. This is not, I'm not, the integrity of the work is just going to go right down the toilet.
Yeah.
And then you realize, well, no, actually, that's not true. Like certainly I'm able to teach online now. So how do you do a Reiki session on the Zoom call?
I do a combination of breath work and Reiki. We do some meditation as well. And it was a really challenge. That first Zoom session I had
Was it a shit show?
was everything went wrong, but it was also a really amazing reminder to myself that, oh yeah, we learn and grow the most through our mistakes. Because
what went wrong?
Okay, so I had done some troubleshooting before, but I got really thrown into it because of everything closing and the pandemic and needing to really adjust really quickly. So I don't know, I didn't have the chat button up. So people were trying to contact me, but couldn't. So they had to unmute and there was music playing. And then I was lowering the volume on the computer, but I had to lower it on Spotify so people couldn't hear me. It was just a disaster. It was a disaster, but I was like, okay, I learned more from that one horrible failure than I did in every subsequent session. So
I tell my students all the time, that's how you learn. That's where the discoveries are. You got to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
You've got to let yourself fail.
Yeah.
How do you compensate for the inability to put your hands on somebody?
Yeah. So the kind of woo-woo part of Reiki is that it does transcend time and space. So there is distance work that happens. So as a Reiki facilitator practitioner, I am that just conduit of that universal life energy, this healing energy. So I visualize in every class, or if I'm working with someone privately, I visualize us just being in person. I visualize my hands just placed on them and that energy and that healing going to the exact same spots that would if we were in person. And the same thing with that was the biggest challenge of, I really thrive off of the group energy and being in the room with a group and kind of picking up on how everyone's doing and feeling and connecting in that way I love it so much. And now I'm on Zoom and there's just like little boxes that I'm looking at. And that was a big challenge, but it really opened up my intuition. I've had to stretch my intuition and connect on a way that is it's just more challenging for me. Working in person feels very easeful. I do it with ease. And so now I'm really stretched to connect on a way that isn't as tangible. But that's been really powerful. I feel like it's been powerful for my intuition. It's been powerful for my imagination, because essentially I am kind of doing imagination work where I'm just visualizing every person that's on the call and also visualizing their response to the work and what I'm saying. So I'm almost responding to imaginary people because I like to have a structure. Every week is a different, or every night, every class is a different theme. So I have a structure of what I want to do and say, and the songs that I pick are all kind of part of that response that I want to evoke from the class. But then within that, it's a lot of just improvisation. For instance, tonight is breathwork and Reiki for support. Tomorrow is breathwork and Reiki for feminine energy. So each class I talk about something a little bit different. Sometimes I, reference something that I've read or a quote, or the way I guide is in direct response to that theme that I'm working on. But sometimes, I'm surprised by what I feel called to say, but it is a very intuitive process. But that's taken a while for me to get in that flow, because I'm not receiving any feedback in the moment. I'm just using my senses and my intuition and I guess my own imagination of what is happening in that space, and responding based off of that.
I know for a fact that there are people listening to this that maybe don't believe in themselves. The way you said that, you struggled with that, have anxiety, deal with self-hate. So I'm curious now, you've been doing this work for how many years?
About 4 years. Yeah.
So what's your relationship now to yourself and that inner monologue now versus 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Oh my. I mean, it really is night and day. I have some perfectionist tendencies. I have, I am really hard on myself. I want to always kind of work towards being better, doing better. But I do so now with a really loving voice, a compassionate voice. And it's been a new level of needing to kind of relearn some of these things during the pandemic, which it makes sense. Anytime we experience a trauma or a crisis, a lot of these negative thoughts, these limiting beliefs come up. But it is, I daily write a list of things I love about myself. I'm constantly trying to cultivate more compassion with myself. And some days it doesn't work fully. And and even creating that compassion when I do have those negative thoughts. So if I am like, God damn it, Laura, like, why did you do this? Or whatever it may be, or, you need to do more, or whatever that voice says, I even approach that voice with compassion of like, oh, that's just that part of me that does want to be better and does want to help more people or reach more people or do more for not only the world, my immediate world, but also for like community. Our personal healing is completely contingent on the health and wellness of the community and the society that we live in. So doing the inner work and doing the outer work necessary to create a healthy society, because our personal healing can only take us so far if we live in a toxic culture, which we do live in. Being able to be malleable, being able to kind of let go of expectations while still setting intentions, while still working hard towards what it is that you want and you're passionate about. And that when you do that, things evolve, things shift. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for kind of that whole journey I took. I kept moving forward. I kept putting myself out there. I kept, finding ways to move forward and finding different things to be passionate about, and that it will evolve. And it probably won't look like you had thought of it to or planned it to, but you might be completely surprised. It might, blow your mind open. It sure has for me. I never would have thought I would be doing this, but I am so, so incredibly passionate about this work. And I love teaching and I love connecting in this way. And it is all still part of that initial passion I had, which was to change the world. I wanted to open people's minds and spirits up. I wanted to help people, deepen their emotional life. And I'm doing all of those things, I feel, in a more kind of direct way than I was able to do as an actor. So this actually feels like a better fit because I'm kind of getting in at the source of opening people's minds and hearts and spirits up directly.
Well, I think we need more people in the world like Laura Pensiero. What a wonderful human being. You can check out her work at pensierohealingarts.com. My fellow daydreamers, thank you for sticking around and keeping that phone in your pocket. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. You can, if you got a few seconds, review it on iTunes. That would mean a hell of a lot to me. You can go to my website, creatingbehaviorpodcast.com, for the links and content to every episode. You can book a private session with me. You can leave me a message. You can follow me on Instagram at Creating Behavior, at Maggie Flanagan Studio. Lawrence Trailer, thank you for the music. My friends, cultivate some self-love, curate some healthy habits, play full out with yourself, and don't ever settle for your second best. My name is Charlie Sandlan. Peace.